नमस्कार। मैं हूं अशोक व्यास। हैरम टीवी कार्यक्रम में आपको स्वागत है। ये जो कार्यक्रम है इसकी टैगलाइन है टुवर्ड्स अ बेटर वर्ल्ड टुगेदर। वक्रतुंड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभ निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्व कार्येषु सर्वदा।
शुक्लांबरधरं देवं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये अभिषेकार्थसिद्ध्यर्थं पूजितोऽयं सुरासने सर्वविघ्नहरं तस्मै गणाधिपतये नमः। वक्रतुण्ड महाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभ निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। मंगलमंगले शिवे सर्वार्थसाधिके शरण्ये त्र्यंबके गौरी नारायणी नमोस्तुते। गुरुं भानुं ब्रह्म विष्णु महेश्वरान् सरस्वती प्रणम्यालो शुभं कर्म समारभे।
पहले तो आपको बहुत बहुत इसके लिए शुभकामनाएं अशोक जी। आपने श्री गणेश किया है हेडम टीवी का, और मैं सोचती हूँ कि वो विवेक के बुद्धि के देवता है, और जहाँ विवेक बुद्धि होती है वहाँ रिद्धि सिद्धि अपने आप ही चली आती हैं।
सौरभ बन कर प्रेममयी
सौरभ बन कर प्रेममयी
सबको वासित कर मुस्का दे,
सबको वासित कर मुस्का दे।
मातु प्रेम सुधा बरसा दे,
मातु प्रेम सुधा बरसा दे।
मन की कलियां आज खिला दे,
मन की कलियां आज खिला दे।
मातु प्रेम सुधा बरसा दे,
मातु प्रेम सुधा बरसा दे।
शत्रु मित्र कोई रहे न जग में,
शत्रु मित्र कोई रहे न जग में।
राग द्वेष मिट जाए मन में,
राग द्वेष मिट जाए मन में।
सब में तू तेरे में सब कुछ,
सब में तू तेरे में सब कुछ।
संवेदमय सब दृष्टि जगा दे,
संवेदमय सब दृष्टि जगा दे।
मातु प्रेम सुधा बरसा दे,
मातु प्रेम सुधा बरसा दे।
मन की कलियां आज खिला दे,
मन की कलियां आज खिला दे।
मातु प्रेम सुधा बरसा दे,
मातु प्रेम सुधा बरसा दे।
मातु प्रेम सुधा बरसा दे।
आप सनातन की ये धारा प्रवाहित करेंगे हेडम टीवी के माध्यम से,
जी
तो मैं सोचती हूँ कि बड़े सनातनियों के बड़े से कान होने चाहिए, ताकि वो बहुत अमृत अपने भीतर ग्रहण करें, और फिर बड़ा पेट होना चाहिए ताकि वो सब भीतर समा जाए, और फिर बड़ी सूक्ष्म दृष्टि होनी चाहिए कि बारीक से बारीक चीज भी दिखे, और फिर मुख पे बड़ी सूंड होनी चाहिए ताकि बोलने से पहले अच्छे से तौला जाए, सुना ज्यादा जाए, कहा कम जाए। ऐसा अगर समाज का निर्माण होगा तो बहुत अद्भुत होगा। तो आपके चैनल के माध्यम से आप सनातन का प्रसाद बांटेंगे, और गणपति बप्पा तो ऐसे ही हैं कि उनका आधान लेकर उनको मुख्य रखकर जो भी होता है वो शुभ ही होता है, श्री ही आती है, समृद्धि ही आती है। सबसे बड़ा श्री और समृद्धि के साथ सुख आता है, और सुख भी स्थायी सुख आता है। तो अशोक जी, मैं आपको बहुत बहुत शुभकामनाएं देती हूँ इस टीवी चैनल के लिए। आप आगे बढ़िए, आसमान आपकी सीमा है। जय हो आपकी।
बहुत नमस्कार। मैं अशोक व्यास से एक खास मुलाकात के लिए अपने सौभाग्य की सराहना करते हुए और अपने गुरु स्वामी श्री ईश्वरानंद गिरि जी महाराज का स्मरण करते हुए एक ऐसे साधक से जुड़ रहा हूँ जो सैनिक भी हैं और साधक भी हैं, या यूँ कहें कि सैनिकों का नेतृत्व उन्होंने भारतीय सेना में वाइस चीफ ऑफ आर्मी स्टाफ की तरह किया। और जब मैं लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल भूपेंद्र सिंह ठाकुर जी को आपके सम्मुख यूँ समझें कि मिलवाने का ये अवसर पा रहा हूँ, तो मैं ये भी याद करके गौरवान्वित हो रहा हूँ कि अपने सेवा कार्य के लिए उन्हें भारत सरकार की तरफ से परम विशिष्ट सेवा मेडल और अति विशिष्ट सेवा मेडल से भी सम्मानित किया गया था। उसके बाद का जो उनका काल है वो भी उनके भीतर के जिज्ञासु की समृद्धि की दृष्टि से बड़ा महत्वपूर्ण है। So with all these words, moving away from more about Thakur uncle, let me have the pleasure of welcoming him with pranams. Pranam uncle, namaste.
प्रणाम, धन्यवाद.
So uncle, I'm addressing you as uncle, and off and on I'll address you as Lieutenant General Thakur Sahab. But let us go to your early days when you were looking at what career to go for, and it was 1965 that you passed from IMA Dehradun. When you recollect those days, those formative years of your life, what are the top things that you recollect?
You have raised a question pertaining to my past. Actually, over the years, I have more or less considered that past to be my Purva Ashram. So I do not normally go back into that remembrance of that period, that being Purva Ashram. So I confine myself normally to the present period. But since you have asked me this question, I joined the National Defence Academy way back in 1961. And thereafter, having passed out after 3 years course in National Defence Academy, Khadakwasla, I went to the Indian Military Academy, and there I passed out in 1965. I joined the Armored Corps. Armored Corps is the one which is equipped with tanks. So I was in the Tank Corps, and my regiment was Central India Horse. So I was with that regiment for a long time, but and in that capacity I worked in various places. I got a chance to visit Canada when I was a major, because I was selected to undergo a 1 year's course in Staff College in Canada. And before that, I'd had a stint of 3 years in Nigeria in their national, they called it Nigerian Defence Academy. And then, of course, 1 year stint in Canada. And then I worked in various capacities, in various ranks. So it gives you a lot of experience. One tends to, that get involved in his work so much that you do not normally think at that particular rank and that particular service of any other thing in the life except your professional part. And that kept my mind busy. So as things kept on going, God was kind, and I was lucky to have come in contact with Swamiji. I was still a major that time, and that was in Jodhpur, way back in 1980. And it was through my late wife. She was in contact with him first, and that I got to know Swamiji. And then it has been an unbroken stint of a contact with Swamiji throughout, until, of course, Swamiji gave up his mortal body 2 years ago. So it's been a long contact with Swamiji, and that has changed a lot of my thinking. Though I was still in service, so I was not able to totally devote myself either to Swamiji. Sadhana, Samvit Sadhana, as we all call it. And it was only after my retirement and after the demise of my late wife that I focused myself towards this side. And then so, Swamiji was...
Allow me to interrupt you, General Sahab, and I appreciate you having broken that normally practiced rule, call it, that you don't talk about Purashram, and that also tells us about the clear demarcation that you have in terms of the new ashram and the Purva ashram. But just for the benefit of sadhakas, while we go back to Major Saab, in 1980. Typically in India, when you meet saints, you have some baggage of preconceived ideas with reference to saffron color. So, if you kindly recollect some of the initial impressions that you formed and whatever was on the top of your mind, whether it was resonating with the expression, the Samvit expression from Swamiji. If you care to share something of those initial days when you started appreciating or understanding where he was coming from.
Okay. Uh, you see, it's like normal contact with any other new person who comes into your life. Though one had Shraddha towards the Gerva Vastra right from the very beginning, and that I suppose was in my sanskara also. So one was always very vinamra, always very, that looked up to them. But it was only when I came in contact with Swamiji, that little bit of that inquisitiveness that rose in my mind because of the following. First thing is that Swamiji had a very imposing personality, and that attracted you towards him. Any newcomer would be attracted towards Swamiji's personality. That was one. Secondly, Swamiji was an extraordinarily very effective and very lucid speaker. Third thing was that he could speak both in English and Hindi and of course Sanskrit very, very lucidly. And I had, before him, had not come in contact with so much of divinity that would flow out of a person and so much of intellect that his persona reflected. So these are some of the things which initially drew me towards him. As I kept on coming in contact with him, I got to know him better and better. I suppose that was mutual from both sides.
So allow me to interrupt you again, and just because we are trying to learn about Swamiji through you, so it kind of becomes relevant to learn from you when you say imposing personality, and that coming from someone in the Purvashram as you were serving as major in the Indian Army. So when this word or this adjective comes from you, it has multiple dimensions. It is not coming from something superficial. So, if I may request you to share, when you say imposing personality, how would you sort of define that in the context of Swamiji?
You see, it is like this. You are asking me to describe my father, and it is normal that I would normally be very close to my father. So it is that initial contact with him which was so imposing on me, as his persona was so impressive and so imposing. And along with that, as I said, that he was, his intellect was something which was unmatchable. He was something which, today I can describe it as that you describe the Guru to be Brahmanist and Shrotriya. At that time, we don't understand what these words mean. We do not understand what is Brahmanist. We do not mean what is Shrotriya. We only mean that yes, he is the person I can look up to, who can guide me. He is the person. So it is that closeness, it's that bond, which is, I suppose, happens in the case of a woman and a man, or a boy and a girl. So it is between the man and his guru. So you do not select him because he's Brahmanist or he's Kshotriya, because you don't even understand the meaning of those words. You select him because वो आपके मन को भा जाता है, and he is the one you feel that you want to get close to. So it was that kind of a relationship. It was that kind of an impression, initial impression I'm talking about. And this all kept on getting strengthened as the years went by.
One question, if you care to address, is you mentioned that you felt flow of divinity in Swamiji, and when you were serving as a major and further there were more promotions and there were the kind of responsibilities which you were having on your shoulder, including leading these group of soldiers, and so what were you imbibing in the form of teaching or impressions or inspiration from Swamiji? Did that make any difference in terms of the way you were discharging your duties?
Oh yes, greatly. You see, one of the very great qualities of Swamiji was the way he was able to explain to you the samanvay between your duties and your side of the spiritual growth. Now, there was never a clash between the two. He would always explain how one was complementary to the other, how your spiritualism can grow, can help you in growing as a person and as a professional. And that is where I thought that as long as I was in service, he always gave me the advice, or he always gave me the upadeshas that related to my job or that related to my profession. At the same time, he just asked me to be in touch with whatever he had given me as Diksha. So he had told me, and then he told that to my wife a number of times when she used to complain to Swamiji that I don't accompany her to various ashram activities. And then my wife would tell me later on, and she only said that, look, whatever he's doing, he is fine with that. So what I had to do was, it is like this is a student. Like if you are you want to appear in an examination, so you have to have 70% of your presence marked in the class. So Swamiji used to say that let him do minimum thing as far as spiritualism is concerned. Let him focus 70% on his this thing, as long as he is marking his presence on the spiritual side. And I never forgot to mark my presence there. And I thought that Swamiji was able to guide me in this, establishing that samanvay. And he never tried to say that this is more important or that is more important. And that is where I think I value his guidance the most. He always told you to live in the present moment. He never said that you think about the past or you think too much about the future. And that is what I followed, that I lived from present to present as we kept growing. So that was a tremendous experience. He had always been, I always said that he was so karunamay that, and I was the recipient of his kripa. You'll be surprised if I tell you this, that since I came in contact with him as a major till I retired as a lieutenant general, I must have served, I don't know, in about 15, 20 stations. I have not counted it now. And he visited me in each and every station that I was posted to. Even when I was posted to Andaman and Nicobar, he came and visited me and spent some time there. So he was so kind and he was so karunamay that he always came. If I was not able to go to him, he was able to come to me. And that is something which I thought was was something which he was being extra kind to me.
So thanks to Swami that we are talking to you as well as we are focusing on the Guru Shakti. Uh, what I heard so far, it is clear that the presence of Guru is significant and substantially helps in our growth. But going back, reflecting on the significance of Guru as every year on Guru Purnima, Swamiji also meditated on the Guru Shakti. Uh, Talk to us about uh, the importance of Guru um, through your own experience as well as based on what you heard from Swamiji.
It is strange when I say that I realize the value of a guru more now that he's gone than I suppose when I was in contact with him while I was serving. So our relationship was of a guru shishya, of course, but yet at the same time, I thought it was more of a friendly relationship. You see, my wife used to check me a number of times that you are crossing the limits. You're not maryada ke andar aap wo nahi. And my wife would always get firing from Swamiji that you keep quiet. You don't sort of interfere in this. And we were able to exchange ideas. When I say exchange ideas, my being totally novice ideas and his being total master's ideas. And he would convey to me more in a friendly manner than in a really Guru Shishya manner. So now that I think back on it, and I said maybe that I should have followed more Maryada, but then I thought that I would have gained less from him if I had, gone purely in the traditional manner, because my wife would even extend of telling me that, when you're walking with the Swamijis, in case Swamiji's shadow falling there, you don't cross the shadow also. I wouldn't even notice the shadow. So, so that is the kind of a thing. But he never held anything back because that is the kind of interaction we had. He never held anything back. And perhaps he knew my level all along. He never tried to give me a concentrated dose anywhere. He tried to walk along with me in my spiritual path depending upon my level of understanding. He never made it difficult for me to understand. So he kept pace with my ignorance, then I kept pace with his wisdom. So I think that is one thing which I can never be more thankful to him for what he did.
So I'm just reminded of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and Arjun also says that I have behaved with you as a friend, and it's just a striking parallel to that. But the questions that were asked are definitely a treasure trove for generations to come in terms of the wealth of inspiration. So if there is any question that you might have asked him casually or not from that point of view of being on the platform of Shishya that you recollect and which you can sort of share with us, because there might have been some call that concerns or maybe clarifications that you sought from him, which you may share if there is any like that.
So I actually, you see, as long as I was in service, I think he was quite happy in letting me focus on my profession, yet at the same time keep my spiritual roots yet deep enough. So what he had always told me is that you focus on your Nityanyam, nitya karma. So whatever niyam you are following, just focus on that, and that is good enough for you. I never had enough time for swadhyaya. In any case, I was not, I suppose, as sharp as that my guru would have liked me to. So that I was more or less kind of a person who was focusing on the profession, yet sort of banking on it just to check back whether I'm still in my roots. I have not sort of gone out of that. He never, as I told you, that he never was, let me feel that what I'm doing in the field of the profession is not something which is going to be a hindrance in the spiritualism. So he would never interfere that. And it is only the time that we spent together, or the time that I had to attend various ashram activities, that I was able to listen to him. But you see, whenever he came to me, he would always make sure that in a private gathering of me, my wife, my children, and one or two sadhgas who happened to be coming, he would always give us private lessons, so as to say, private lessons about shastras, any particular subject, that he would take it on. And we would imbibe that. But that was only for the period when he was with me. Otherwise, other than that, I was attending to mostly Guru Puja is one thing which he always told me that I must attend. So I used to make it a point to attend the Guru Puja, and as many of these ashram functions as possible. But if I was not able to attend any ashram function, he never took misunderstanding to that. He was always able to appreciate my being busy somewhere else. And therefore, he never said. But then, you see, it is my wife who used to attend all these functions. So she would give me a feedback of what all had gone there. As far as particular, you are asking, it's very difficult to, think of an instance where I can narrate as to what kind of a thing I picked up from him. I can only give you one, but that is not during the service period, so that is really not relevant.
Well, that's okay. Whatever comes is good then.
No, he once told me that it is important for a sadhaka to attend the Guru Puja. So that is the experience that I was conveying to you, that he told me, no, it is not your choice at that time. If you are free, if you are available, you must make it a point to attend the Guru Puja. So that is one which I always carried with me, and always attended Guru Puja for as long as he was there.
So I just want to recollect for those who have joined us a little late, that it is my good fortune to be meditating, or to be thinking, or to be listening about Swami Sri Ishwaranand Giriji Maharaj, founder of Samvit Sadhanayan, and the gentleman, or the senior sadhaka, Samvit Sadhaka, after having served for 40 years with the Indian Army, retired in 2005 as Vice Chief of Army Staff with the Param Vishishta Seva Medal and decoration of Ati Vishishta Seva Medal, and that he considered as Purvashram. So not talking too much, or rather not talking about that aspect of his life, but sadhana, how being in the present helps us, is relevant for everyone. So now and then we may switch slightly, but talking about the significance of Diksha. Once you take Diksha, for those who are not well familiar with what is it that we refer to as Diksha, so kindly tell us about that, and also how it helped you learn more about yourself once you started practicing the Diksha mantra.
Okay, now I suppose, Diksha is something which varies from some pratha to pratha being followed by various gurus in their own parampara. As far as Swamiji's parampara is concerned, when we talk about Diksha, Swamiji used to give us mantra Diksha. So depending upon your ishta, he would give you a mantra diksha, and then he would tell you to there are certain things after which become mandatory after receiving the diksha, and that is japa is one part of it, and upasana, if you can do that. And then along with that, there are some basic qualities. Swamiji had taken out a very small little booklet in which taru ke liye he had given those directions, that what all should be taru, what all, it's almost compulsory for a taru to do. So with his shastras means the books written, authored by him, one would always know what is expected of you. So that is something, like what I said, that I had to mark my presence. I never used to miss on my nitya karma. So that is something which I followed all along. So that is, and he used to, in fact, instance that you were quoting about when he came for my 70th birthday, and he was talking about it. So he was very, very impressed by this, that whatever niyama I had, I used to follow them, and there was seldom be any break in it. Depending upon if there's any exigency, that is something else. So that is, as far as Diksha, as I understood, that that is the initial initiation. And then actually it is like your initial sanskara when you are born. So after that initial sanskara, and whatever that sanskara is called, initially I think the first one which is the child ke madhu dal ke, then guru gives the mantra in the child's ears. So I think that is that stage. You are still a child in the spiritual path. And having got this thing, so if you continue to follow it religiously, and then if Guru is convinced, yes, that you'll follow his instructions, whatever you're told to, then he will guide you to the next path. My real guidance, contact was in Swamiji became more intense and more close when I retired. And it is after retirement that when I had time to myself, Swamiji and I, we were in contact far more than what we were able to do during my service period. And that is the time...
sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
So we come to this phase after your retirement, but staying before retirement, and I just recollect Swamiji having visited, as you mentioned, at several places, including Andaman, Nicobar, and what we all remember is Swamiji's love for nature.
Yes.
So he would help you communicate with trees, and youth he always referred to as tarus. And so if any memory of your being in his presence at some beautiful natural setting, or sometimes he would have some remarks which kind of stays with you for a long time, either witnessing sunrise or sunset with him, or maybe if you were near ocean, he would probably say something that might have stayed with you.
You see, nature, whether it was the beaches of Andaman and Nicobar, or whether the Himalaya mountains here, or whether when he visited me in Shimla, you see, I would see the other side of Swamiji's nature when he was totally one with that nature. He loved being in nature. That is whether it is the beaches near the ocean, or whether it is the river, or whether it is the tall trees of Himalayas, or whether it was the solitude, a lonely place. He would, there was almost like a childlike enthusiasm in his, which used to percolate, which could be sensed by you, which could be perceived by you. And then, you know, he has, when he was here, I suppose you said we will talk about it later, so I will leave that part for now. He would sit down in quiet and then he would jot down his impressions, including the songs and kirtan bhajans that he has authored. Unfortunately, they are still with me, and one or two maybe along in the ashram, but they are still with me. Then those ideas would follow. For example, when he looked at the snow-covered peaks, he would give the analogy as if bhasmi has been sprayed on the Shivlinga. So that is this thing. And then when I go through his impressions that he's written, and he's left it in a notebook and he left it with me. So those are the kind of impressions which one carries, and maybe one did not understand it many years ago. But now I feel that, that perhaps was an expression of his oneness, of his, that what we call it as samabhava. He used to be one with the nature. And that was greatly visible whenever he was outside in the nature. And not only me, but my entire family has been deeply impressed by this. Only thing which I must tell you is this, that whenever he was with me, there was only administrative problem which I used to face was Swamiji never likes to go on the same path for walk, second time. So you had to choose a new area for him every day almost. So you had to take him to a different place. Now, problem with me was that the condition of his health as it was that time, I did not want to take him either where there was too much of climbing involved. I would always want to find a piece which was flat, so that where you could find it easy to walk, and that's not so easy in hills. So I had to take him to different places every day. Maybe I could repeat the same place after 7 days, but not before that. So that is something. It used to be a fabulous experience walking with him on guide. And then he would hold out your hands, and then you see, and then he would talk to you, and a person watching you from a distance would feel that maybe these are two people who are in a serious kind of this thing note, but we were not discussing anything spiritual or anything shastric. What he was talking is giving the description of the nature. And then he told me, and that he used to be so fascinated by these Devadar Vriksha, because they are absolutely straight. And then he used to be fascinated by walking through an area which is thickly wooded. And if you could take him to this such thickly wooded areas filled with Devadaru trees, he used to be totally in the elements. And that was very stimulating spiritually to see him as.
And I also recollect he would have thorough research of the place which he would visit. And I recollect being in Manali with you and Swamiji, and the way different places related to Manu also. And I may not recollect the way he would describe about the place with its Puranic significance. So there are two questions. One, he had a lot of love for hills, mountains, himself being Giri. So in addition to Manali, any other place where you were with him on a mountain sort of spot that you may recollect, and anything that comes to your mind with that memory lane, and we we sort of move towards Manali with you, and then probably we'll switch back to the other uh, timeline, as you kindly respected my suggestion that post retirement we'll talk later, but we can sort of toggle here and there, because it is nature and Manali. Yeah.
Yeah. So, other place which straight away comes to my mind was, of course, Shimla, where he visited me more than once. Um, and huh? And of course, you know that um I almost accompanied him. I can call it, I don't know whether I should call it that. It was almost like a private journey with him to Kedarnath twice. To first time when my wife died, then that was left halfway because we decided to turn back. Then second time, so twice I have accompanied him to the Uttarakhand, Kedarnath, and then Shimla, and then here in Manali. Manali, you quoted, I suppose, I don't know if you want to come back to Manali again, then I can keep quiet now and wait for your questions. But Manali is a place which he had visited as a young sannyasi also, along with his guru, many, many years ago. And he had many recollections of Manali, though Manali has changed its face many times. But then yet, he was telling me that having lived in Manali, he had not visited Manu's place, Manu's Mandir. And when I took him for the first time, and he was so thrilled with it. And that is the time when he gave me the entire Puranic story, and then he told us. And then, of course, I don't know whether you recall, he narrated that poem. And then he told us that when that, yes, Himgiri ke Tung Shikhar par. I don't know whether you've ever heard Swamiji giving that poem. And then he told us that how that Nav came along the bed of the Byas River when the Byas River was rising and he was still in the higher places, and how that eventually that boat went to a place called Jagat Sukh, where initially that Srishti took, that appeared, and that Vedas appeared. That is how the Puranic story goes. So with him around, it was more fun to get to know these places, because he would tell me and Swamiji's, I don't know whether you have realized it or not, Swamiji had a very, very, very deep affiliation with Vishishtji. And that may have been the reason why he chose Mount Abu. Or it is Mount Abu that may have brought him close to Vishishtji. And when he came to know that Manali is another place where there is a Vishisht temple, he was totally devoted towards that. And every time he would come to Manali, I had to take him to Vishisht. That was something which had to be fixed in an itinerary. And he was so happy, so thrilled to be there. So these two places were must, Manu and Vishisht. So I had to take. And third, 2 or 3 places, there were more, but more about that later.
So now, staying with Swamiji in the context of his love for nature and his own nature. So the way we from a distance, when I say we, meaning those Shishyas who were not as, I don't know, each one connects with Guru and understands and appreciates according to his own patrata. But when I say one, I'm saying about me actually, but I always felt that there was so much space in him. There was a sense of openness, and there was a strictness, yet there was a blend of forgiveness and the kind of palpable love which you would feel around him is a unique experience. You don't you don't get that anywhere else in the
I,
world, probably.
I agree with you. I remember when I was in Jodhpur, I told you that I came in contact with him in Jodhpur, but that was a major. Then subsequently, I picked up my next rank, Lieutenant Colonel, and I was commanding my regiment in Jodhpur, and I was still in touch with Swamiji. And that is where I got to meet the Tarus of Jodhpur with Swamiji in a camp that a shivar which he had organized. And something which was so extraordinary about Swamiji was that with the Tarus of Jodhpur, and that is why I feel that each one of them feels so close to him, that he was not like a guru to them. He was not even like a teacher, but he was like a Taru himself. He was so always full of exuberance, like all Tarus were. And then he was play around with them, and something like this is some quality of Swamiji which I should have mentioned earlier when you asked me. He's like Lord Krishna. When Ras Leela takes place, each gopi thinks that she has got Krishna to himself. He was something like that. And I was fascinated by noticing that irrespective of the number of disciples he had, if you ask any disciple who does not feel close to that Swamiji, and he feels that Swamiji gave all the time to him. So same thing, I think Tarus had developed into a very fine middle-aged men now. And I'm so happy to see that ashram in Jodhpur is flourishing in its Samvit activities. I think it's because of the grounding which Swamiji gave. It wouldn't have happened otherwise. It wouldn't have happened. So that is his exuberance was the exuberance of his Shishya. And not he would forget about his age, he'd forget about his status of being a teacher, his status of being a guru. He was more of a friend to everyone, not to me only. So I think that was his fantastic nature.
But very special friend for you. And when you mention about Ras, I am reminded of having seen Swamiji being pulled in the circle of Tarus while they to dance actually with them, with us, while the song, the kirtan was Aaj Sakhi Sun Kahan Se Aayi, Nupur Ki
Yes.
Jankar. So
Yes.
and
Yes.
and in this context, if I may ask you, when we say Samvit Sadhana, the word Samvit, many of the sadhakas are not very clear when someone else asks them the meaning of Samvit. So if I take the advantage of your presence, what is Samvit and what is Samvit Sadhana?
You have to see Swamiji's background. Okay, Swamiji came from Dakshinamurti Mutt. Okay, Dakshinamurti Mutt, which I know it as, I have visited this mutt in Kashi also, and of course I've seen the Shankar Mutt in Mount Abu, and I have attended their classes for a fair bit of time. Now, his background was always that mutt provided you Vedantic education. That education was part and parcel of that mutt. Okay, so Swamiji, I suppose, has, and Swamiji himself used to tell that my guru used to joke around, Dada Guru used to joke around with Swamiji, ki dekho, agar ye, if he is your guru, then he is going to bring in Samvit in every aspect of your life. For Swamiji, Samvit is a very, very dear word to him. So his Samvit is. So when I was I spent about 1 year continuously, 1 year period in Jodhpur studying Vedanta. And I came in contact, I used to be staying in our own ashram, and I came in contact with very senior sadhakas, and everybody had his own definition of Samvit. Now that I think back on it, now as I mull on it and I do some vimarsha and chintan on it, I think rightly Samvit means different to different people. And as long as they are doing what Swamiji told them to do, I think they are on the Samvit path. Now, if you ask my understanding of Samvit, that may not be your understanding of Samvit. But you are right in following the path which your Guru has told you. So I have nothing against that. Now, in case you ask me, what is Samvit? Samvit is what is the ultimate aim of Char Mahavakya. Okay. What 4 Mahavakyas tell you to achieve, that is what Samvit conveys. Okay. You have to achieve that. But that is not all. That is not the only definition. You see, it all depends, because when we were, now that when I think about it, it is unfair of me to be thinking that 1,000 sadhakas will have the same frame of mind. Now 1,000 sadhakas, not only they will have 1,000 frames of mind, but some even have 2 or 3 of them. So there will be 2,000 frames of mind. Okay. So imagine a guru who has to tackle with such a variety of his shishyas and tell them what path they should follow as a common entity in a group. And that, when he said, Samvit sadhana, to my way of thinking, as I understand it, is a very fine balance, a very fine samanvay between Gyan, Karma, Upasana, Yoga. So that is the beautiful balance which Swamiji has established in all these 4 departments. And that, depending upon what your choice is, you follow that. And you are still on the path. You are not left that path. So he is not telling you that you become a Vedanti. He has never told anyone. I don't think he has told anyone at all that you become Vedanti. And that is why if you see amongst our sadhakas, there are very few of us who are Vedantis. And I'm so happy to see you all when you spare your 1 hour every day and you sit there. And I realize that at least there are 15 of them who are wanting to know as to what it is. So, but you all are good sadhakas. You all are serious sadhakas. So you are all Samvit sadhakas. So whatever you're doing, that is according to your nishtha. So depending upon your nishtha, whatever you're doing, you are doing Samvit sadhana. That yet, if you read Swamiji's Shastras, all the books that he has written, they are un sabka adhishthan, substratum is Vedanta. All unka adhyan. He has given you, he's given you his teaching by giving you various aspects of Vedanta. But then he has put it, what I like to call as a mystic manner. I like to call Swamiji as a mystic. You know, you have to understand Swamiji, that Swamiji was such a deep person that he will convey you everything. If you are smart enough to pick it up, you do. Otherwise, if you continue doing what you are doing, he will not interfere with your way of life. He'll say, okay, fine, whatever is your nishtha, you do that. And that is the beautiful part of his being guru. That I understand to be a Samvit sadhana.
So I recollect Swamiji mentioned about different kind of gurus. So one he equated with a doctor who would sit on the chest of the patient and would force the medicine so that he gets cured. So he talked about different ways in which Guru approaches the Shishyas. But staying with Samvit Sadhana, and we talked about Diksha, and you also mentioned about the significance of Upasana. And if I may request you before coming to Samvit Sadhana, staying with Samvit, you said that the 4 Mahavakyas all indicate Samvit. So if you care to help us connected with each Mahavakya. Many of us might not even recollect, like Brahmasmi, and so vaguely I am putting that in my mind. But if you kindly say something about Mahavakyas and Samvit.
You see, basically, Mahavakyas explain to you the Akya, oneness of Atma and Paramatma. Wherever you consider yourself not to be Atma, then it is never oneness with Paramatma. Whenever you consider yourself as a human being, as a Deh, as a Sharira, then you are only focused on the Anatma part. No, as you carry out your studies, Swadhyaya, as you learn from Guru, as you read Shastras, and you get to know that what your real nature is, and that real nature being your Atma, you get to know the Atma, then Shastra tells you that the oneness of your Atma with Paramatma. So these are the four Mahavakyas which tell you that first one being Tattvamasi, that is Tat Tvam Asi. Tat is the Padarth which is described in Paramatma. Tvam is the Padarth which is describing your Atma. Asi means hai. Both are one. So that means Atma or Paramatma ek hai. The same thing is conveyed by other three Mahavakyas. We call them three Mahavakyas. I am Atma Brahma, Aham Brahmasmi, Pragyanam Brahma. These are the other. They all three convey the same thing. So what I was trying to tell you is, in context of Swamiji's literature, you will always, if you read it very, very carefully, he would convey to you this, that this is the ultimate which Vedanta is trying to tell you. And then he would say that for this is what you should be doing. But yet, he will not say that if you are, let us say, if you are a Karmakandi, he will never tell you what you are doing is wrong, because I also feel now that nothing wrong with whatever you are following, because whatever is you're following is according to Shastras. Okay, and Shastras very clearly define what is Dharam, what is Adharam. So as long as you're doing everything according to Dharma, it is okayed by the Shastras. So how can one understand? So in his definition of Samvit, he encompassed all these aspects. All these aspects, that whatever you're doing ultimately will lead you towards that finally Samvit that we talked about, that is Atma or Paramatma ka Ekya. But whatever you're doing, you're on the Samvit path. You're not on a different path. So you're not on divergence with ultimately you have to go to. So depending upon what was your achievement, you could go to Guru and say, Swamiji, this is what I want to learn more about it. But then there were some people who think that, journey itself is the aim, instead of worrying about the destination. So some people enjoy the journey so much, and they are fascinated by the journey itself, and they feel quite happy. So at least you have started the journey. One day you will reach. So that is why you're not on the wrong path. You're on the same path.
और अब आज का अहरम टीवी कार्यक्रम का ये अंक समाप्त करने का वक्त आ गया है. हम आपका धन्यवाद करना चाहेंगे ITV गोल्ड के चेयरमैन पद्मश्री डॉक्टर सुधीर पारिक जी का उनके उत्साहवर्धन के लिए धन्यवाद करना चाहेंगे.
It's my privilege and honor to congratulate and wish good luck to Haram Patrika and its maker, Mr. Ashok Vyas, who is starting this great initiative. I really wish Ashok Vyas and Haram Patrika it's a success, and I would like to give them my support unconditionally to make it most successful.
और कई मित्रों का, शुभचिंतकों का आभार धन्यवाद करते हुए आप सबके प्रति प्यार और मंगल कामनाएं विशेष रूप से इस क्षण व्यक्त करते हुए अनुमति लेते हैं. नमस्कार.